Hello and welcome. We are live in Washington, D.C., home of the American Baseball Coaches Association. And tonight we're going to talk all things pitching. And I am really excited that I think for the first time obviously the first time in 2025, and Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everybody had a great holiday season. I hope everybody's excited about the upcoming spring, and obviously baseball season is right around the corner. But I think the most often asked question that I receive or that we receive at the Blue Book is, how can I prepare my son to be a better pitcher? What type of pitching tips would you give a 10-year-old? What type of pitching grips are really most important for, the younger pitchers? And I thought tonight we would go to the experts, and the experts are now located, they used to be Massachusetts born and raised, but now they are in greater Houston, Texas, at the Lions Den in Porter, Texas. So I want to make sure that people understand Porter is kind of like what maybe Dedham is to Boston or Hyde Park is to Boston. Porter, Texas is right outside the greater confines of Houston, Texas. And in 2011 in Massachusetts, it was Tyler Beede. And I think, Maddie, it was 2013 that you were at Milton Academy?
Later than that, 2017.
2017, which boggles my mind. The phenom out of the ISL, which is home of like Groton Academy and Brooks and Lawrence Academy and Milton Academy, was Matt Tabor, who was a second-round draft pick out of high school, Maddie?
He's second overall by Arizona. So, yeah, I appreciate
82nd, so top 100, which is mind-boggling. I don't think enough parents understand. If you're a top 100 pick for a major league team out of high school, you are what they call a dude. And Matty Tabor was 82 and a draft pick of the Diamondbacks. And so he is part of what we affectionately call he is the Lions Den co-pilot, or I don't even know how you guys differentiate yourself, but he is the co-representative of the Lions Den in Portland, Texas, Matt Tabor. And Matty, I want you thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to try to add the guy with my last name. Let's see if I can add him to the stage. Here he is, Tyler Beede.
Love being backstage. What a time and a place to be.
Hey, look at me.
I'm honored to be backstage at Walter Beede's StreamYard. It was a pleasure to be back there. You have quite the ensemble back there. Great people working for you behind the stage.
Well, I will tell you, I just ran into Tim Corbin, Larry Day, Chris Pollard. I've run into all kinds of people here in Washington, D.C., and I'm really excited because it feels like baseball season. So I'm really happy that you and Mr. Tabor have taken the time to join me tonight, because we are going to talk anything and everything to do with pitching. And parents, I encourage you, if you have a question, I want you to, send that along. I'll ask both Matt and Tyler. We're going to get those questions answered. But the first thing I want you to do as parents or athletes, hit the like button and the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. I don't ask enough. I need to start asking more. That's my New Year's resolution. We have about 65% of people that watch the YouTube channel that don't subscribe. If you like this kind of content, I need you to hit the subscribe button and join the conversation. So guys, happy 2025. I appreciate your time. I know you both are very busy at the Lions Den. Maybe Matt or Tyler, do you want to explain to folks what the Lions Den is all about and where the Lions Den is located?
Yeah, I appreciate the floor on that. No, we have a training facility in Northeast Houston where we train specifically pitchers centered around a 5-pillar process. So, did we lose them?
I think you're good. Keep going. No.
Oh, I don't see my pops. centered around a 5-pillar process. Obviously, strength and conditioning being vital to what we do, skill development.
I'm here.
Gotcha, Walt?
Yeah, I hit the wrong button.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we center our developmental process around 5 pillars, being strength and development, skill development, mental performance, and player pathway being one of the injury mitigation. And so, yeah, just doing what we can in the community that we've been given to give back to guys and provide an opportunity for them to get ready for the season ahead and stay healthy throughout their season moving forward. Matt's been obviously extremely vital since he got back from his time with Seattle last year. Being instrumental in the community and growing the group that we have there, getting close to about 40 guys. And so having the opportunity to have a full-time pitching director, Chip White, a full-time strength and conditioning coach with Richard Drew, and Matt and I sort of overseeing and pitching director roles, it's been awesome. It's a really talented area in Houston, and lucky to be able to have a chance to impact those guys.
Matt, I want to ask you, because, both you and Tyler, myself, we grew up in New England. We grew up in Massachusetts. Gets a little cold this time of year, but you guys are fortunate enough to live in the land of the heat. Talk a little bit about what you're able to bring as far whether it's mental toughness, mental discipline, but, the craft of pitching that you're able to share now with the gift of technology and online opportunities and so forth. Talk a little bit about what the Lions Den, the purpose of the Lions Den, is to kind of give back with regard to not only arm care, but the craft of pitching.
Absolutely. And while you hit on the fact that it's 2 drastically different locations, right? And kind of what comes along with that is two drastically different ways to approach the game, right? I think down here in Texas, it's a lot more specialization early and a lot more pedal to metal at all times. There's this really like a driving force of it's anxiety driven, it's pressure driven behind all these kids coming from the high schools, their travel programs, et cetera. And that's kind of been one of the biggest things I think we've strived for, is to get these guys to fall in love back with the game. And fall in love back with the process. And truly kind of the way that we've kind of attacked that is through, I know Tyler mentioned the 5-pillar process, and that's something that's new potentially kind of to 2025. I guess it's a new name in a sense. We're kind of just putting our finger on something that we've been able to kind of, we've done our whole career, and we think it's instrumental to be able to bring to these guys down here, as they really kind of specialize early and they start to take this approach of like, I have to get it done with all means necessary. Right. And so I think there's a big piece of this that's slowing these guys down, getting them to understand that it's not just pedal to metal every day, that you have to take that same intensity to your recovery work, to your mobility work, to your time in the sauna, time in the cold tub, tied with your mind, and ultimately like your arm care, right? Whether that's, going through some manuals with me on the table, doing your, mobility work for your shoulder, your spine, your hips, whatever that might be. You have to take that same intensity and that same desire and drive and want that you have to play Division I baseball or, get drafted or whatever that goal is for you. And we really have to focus harder with these guys because they have a limited time off and they're feeling that pressure and that stress coming from everywhere around them.
Well, guys, I can tell you that I've had a lot of questions that have been submitted because a lot of people have highly anticipated this discussion with relation to the pitching development. And parents want to know, I don't know who wants to start with this, but the first question on top of every parent's mind is, when does a athlete really begin to focus on pitching as opposed to, being a position player that pitches or a pitcher that plays a position? What are your thoughts on, that 9 or 10-year-old that's just learning to pitch? What should the focus be for that particular age group? I would say the 9 through, say, 11-year-old grouping, as far as just focusing on throwing strikes or throwing your fastball for strikes. What kind of information and feedback would you give for that 9 to 12-year-old athlete?
Yeah. I guess I'll start. I think for me at that age, if a player decides he wants to pitch in games, the focus obviously always being on commanding the ball, right? I think at that age, a coach is going to put you out there on the mound if you're more likely to throw strikes and prioritize getting the ball over the plate. And that kind of, leans into the fact of if you do want to pitch and have a passion for it, those times where you get the chance to practice, whether it be in the backyard or at the field, is having, your dad or somebody sit down, your brother sit down and act like you're throwing to him to catch, just to work on having a general idea of like what it feels like to repeat your delivery and throw balls over the plate. Other than that, though, aside from like a few, hyper focused sessions of training to throw strikes, I wouldn't train anything related to, the delivery aside from, making sure you can repeat a nice balance point, landing in a controlled setting, not trying to overthrow and fall all over the place. But anything more technical than that doesn't need to be really, that subject doesn't need to be broached until you're probably around the age of 12 to 13, when you can start to comprehend a little bit more advanced mechanical adjustments. But I think just getting to a place where you can trust athleticism at that age. And so encouraging to play multiple positions in multiple sports, train your body to move in space, to readjust, to reorient in space, playing wall ball, playing pickle, throwing a tennis ball against the wall, having different arm actions, all those things just really like foster an environment to be more athletic and to move more fluidly. And that's my biggest thing for guys that we get that come into our doors at the Den are like, let's make you an athletic mover if you're not, or let's continue to hone in on those strengths if you are. So that's where I'd say to start.
So Matt, I want you to kind of re-emphasize, a lot of parents get consumed with lessons for children that are, say, 8 through 11 or 12. I, for one, as a dad, never believed in lessons at 8 to 12 or 13. What do you talk about with parents that say, my son loves to pitch, and he's a little leaguer or a young travel ball player, as far as the training, as far as being able to play catch a lot, being able to play competitive catch? What are you working or telling or instructing parents and athletes at that age to be really resilient and focused on?
Yeah, it's a two-part question, right? I think the first question I want to address is the parents. I think really the foundation and the core of everything, especially at that age, is workload management, right? It's there's so many games, so many tournaments, et cetera, and so many, like you said, so many positions played, right? And I think it's important to understand that all throws are throws, right? It's all stress in our body, and our shoulder, elbow, anything in our body doesn't understand, right? Like whether I'm in the bottom of the seventh inning with 1 out and 2 men on, or I'm playing shortstop, fielding the backhand and trying to throw a guy out at the plate, right? It's still stress on my body that my arm has to learn to adapt to, and too much stress without recovery is bad for any arm and any body, whether you're playing in the big leagues or you're 8 years old. It's the same across the board. And so that's the biggest thing that I would mention for parents is set a foundation early of workload management. Just a general rule that I've kind of liked using with the guys at the Den and use with guys over the last few years is just 2 low days, 2 high days, 2 medium days a week, 1 day off. Like a low day is just a light catch day, 60 feet, 20 throws, just get the arm moving. Medium days, maybe long toss, whatever, and then your high days or your game days, your bullpen days. But kind of going on that relative, very basic structure, I think, is just a first step that a lot of parents can take to make sure that they're doing the right thing for their son. And then obviously, like coming on and, watching all this stuff that you put out, Wall, I think is just huge to continue to grow the education there. So that's a really good foundation. And then what to work on for those kids, I think the first thing is just put down the radar gun. Right? You're 9, 10, 11 years old, you're not going to change the world, whether it's 62, 63, 64. The more you just try to, force, square peg in a round hole when the mechanics aren't right, the workload, tracking has been right. And there's been really nothing along the lines to suggest that high intent throwing is a good idea at this moment. Like, it's not jump to that and hope for the best. It's take care of the foundation, build the house the right way, and make sure that first floor and that cement foundation are a really good spot to last all the way, through hopefully, your son reaches the professional ranks and, can have the career that he wants to, because that foundation has been set from such a young age.
One of the topics that I get asked a lot about with regard to pitching and pitching development of young pitchers. And then Tyler, I would love for you to discuss, how did your dad handle the secondary pitches? In other words, when were you introduced to your changeup or your other pitches? And really, what do you remember about your Little League days from the age of 10 through 12 that you might want to share? And we're going to get to that 13 to 18-year-old phase. I want parents to know that. And if you have a question, you can submit that. I see a bunch of them coming in right now. But Tyler, if you could just share your memories 10 to your Little League years, what do you remember most about your development phase as a pitcher during those years with you and I?
It was just fun, right? It was no pressure. It was a lot of, I had a feeling that I was getting to a place where I had a gift with it. I had a skill that was, it was exciting to get to go pitch, right? It was disappointment if it was raining out. It was, like I was bummed, and I know you remember those days where it was like, gosh, it's raining, we can't play. I'm real bummed about it. And I think in a lot of ways, like those years, when Matt and I talk about kind of how we like to foster the environment at the Lions and centered around really like bringing the fun of the game back. It's cliche in a lot of ways, but it's so true. And I have professional teammates who feel the same way, where it's just, at that level, it obviously becomes a business. But even before that, it becomes almost something that you have to do instead of something that you want to do. And, at that age, I just remember it being something that I really wanted to do. I had a lot of fun doing, and that lasted for a good chunk of years. But at some point, I started to crave being that age again. I started to crave the innocence of not knowing too much, of not having as many voices in my head, of not trying to, play for the approval of other people, not trying to, be somebody that I wasn't. I was Tyler Beede. I was kind of just natural athleticism and gift to throw the ball, not any harder really than a lot of those kids at that time,
right.
But just in a way that I, had fun competing, and it was something that my friends were doing, so I really wanted to do it. And there's something pure about that, and something to be bottled up to say, and I say this all the time to parents who have kids who are that age, and they say, man, like, what should I start doing when my kid is 13, 14, 15, 16, I say, whoa, like, just please enjoy that and make sure that it's palpable for your son, that he's not rushed through. Once you get to the big diamond, we will do this. Or once you get to this age, we'll start to travel. And just really enjoy those years, because I think when you can watch your kid play at that age, or if you can watch video of yourself playing in those years, you'll want to look back on those and say, I wish I could play like that kid played more often.
Matt, I really want to kind of expand upon that thought from Tyler. And I get a lot of parents that start forward thinking at very young ages, and they want to start talking about grips and pitches and, all of these different techniques. But as a professional, you're taught not to fear contact, to seek weak early contact. But yet when you're young, we're trying to fool hitters, and we're trying to throw curveballs and sliders and sweepers. But in reality, hitters will get themselves out, even the best of the best, at 7 out of 10 times. Can you talk about that mindset from a young age of getting pitchers to not fear contact, to try to be aggressive with regard to seeking that weak ground ball early in a count, and why that matters as pitchers get older?
Absolutely. I think the most successful pitchers in the game, you can just kind of see it. You feel it. They have a will and, an ability to kind of flip the switch and just say, I'm going to get it done here. And it doesn't matter if, in reality, I can't control this. I'm going to control it. I'm going to go make it happen. And inherently what's kind of tied into that is like a no fear attitude. It's saying I'm going to throw the ball in the zone, and, I trust that my stuff is good enough, whether it's, swing and miss, contact, weak contact, whatever it is, right? Like I had a mentor tell me one time, and it was so simple, but it was true. It is just, it takes balls to throw strikes. And it really, right? It really does. It takes nuts to throw the ball in the zone, and anything can happen, but you got to have that confidence to attack the hitter. When you're going for swing and miss, you're going in the dirt, you're doing all these things. This is maybe a little bit more advanced, kind of like the 15, 16, 17 age group. You're kind of inherently scared, right? Because you're going for that perfect spot, that perfect pitch. Like I would encourage every single kid, to throw with intent, compete, and have that will to win, where it doesn't really matter what, reality tells you. You're going to go execute what you just saw in your head, what you just visualized on the back of the mound. You stepped on the bump, you got that fastball down the middle, and you're going to execute it. And it doesn't matter what happens after that, because you're the best out there. So that's that belief it takes to ultimately have that success at the highest level.
So Ty, I would love for you, because I get a lot of pushback on this topic, and I would love for you to share. I'll never forget, you were playing Tommy Sarkeesian's team, and you gave up a home run on a changeup, and everybody went around the bases, and it was a 3-0 lead. You ended up winning the game 5-3. But talk about your passion to develop a changeup at a very young age, and why that ended up becoming your bread and butter as a high school drafted first round and in college. The power of learning and the discipline of learning a pitch like the changeup. It's a craft pitch that doesn't require you to, twist a wrist or anything like that. But the craft of pitching takes time, like fine wine. Can you just talk about learning the craft of pitching from, say, 12 to 17 or 18, and even now as a 31-year-old?
Yeah, I think it's unique because it's something that I think is always, needs the attention to be focused on when it comes to your delivery. When it comes to the changeup, I think I always loved the changeup because, it was something that for me came natural in regards to feel, because I would play catch with it a lot, right? I think being able to play, quality catch, high reps with your changeup instead of just spamming fastballs and catch and then hoping that when you get on the slope that you can find your changeup is maybe a misconception. Needing to play catch with it is really important. And, even extending it back to 75, 85, 90 feet to really feel release point out front. And what I realized when I would throw it is not only I'd had a good feel, but it would fool hitters, and it would specifically fool right-handed hitters. And it was a pitch that to me always was a go-to. I could throw it, 3-2 count. I could throw it to righties. I could throw it bases loaded. And so I developed a confidence in it early on. And I also, saw it, continue to perform really well as I got older and faced better players. And so always something that I knew I could go to. And the same goes for your delivery. There always needs to be a time for athletic catch play and a time where you need to kind of let your body move freely in space. But then there's also a time where you need to really play a high quality game of catch focused on execution, hitting your partner in the chest, trying to hit him in the, in the cap or whatever it might be, playing a game, if you will, but making sure that you focus on, quality movements within your delivery. And so the delivery is always, something that can be slightly modified, but there needs to be an understanding that each pitcher moves kind of uniquely to themselves, right? Getting to a place where, I watch Matt Tabor pitch and now all of a sudden I want to throw like Matt Tabor, or I see Jacob deGrom. Now I all of a sudden want to, pitch like Jacob deGrom. It happens to professionals, it happens to high school pitchers, and it happens to little leaguers, right? We need to understand that we've all been wired uniquely. Our movement patterns are different than most anybody else's. And so the delivery that we sort of naturally have, some of the natural tendencies, those are to be worked on. Those are to be worked on and crafted and molded. But we can't try to be somebody that we're not when it comes to our delivery. And so the sooner that you can really lean into that reality and be around a trusted set of eyes and a coach who can help you lean into those strengths and help you improve sort of the weaknesses and iron them out, the inefficiencies in your delivery, the better. And then just owning that, own who you are, the uniqueness of your delivery, and just make it work for yourself is what I would say.
So Matty, I know that I was a big proponent when it came to Tyler's development, to having him, and Tyler always played, whether it was Little League 10 through 12, Babe Ruth, he faced Timmy Collins when Timmy Collins was 16. I think Tyler was 11. And then he played Legion baseball when he was like 13 or 14. We have this misconception today, in today's world of youth baseball, that our children have to go 10, 11, 12, 13. But at the high school, college, and professional level, we're dealing with athletes of all ages. You could be a 19-year-old college freshman facing a 24-year-old college senior, or a professional at 18 facing a minor leaguer at 22. Can you talk about pitching has no age restriction? You could be a great 16-year-old that can face 22 or 23-year-olds. Can you talk about that from a mindset perspective when you and Tyler are at the den and teaching pitchers how to compete? Sometimes it's better to compete with your strengths rather than against the hitter's weaknesses, as far as ages and size and strength are concerned. Can you talk about that mindset as a pitcher?
Yeah, no, I love that question. Well, I could talk on and on about it, but I think the first thing that comes to mind when talking about like the age groups and everything, right, is like, for a parent or an athlete, right, the ultimate success of your career is getting to the big leagues, right? And you sign out of high school or whatever, like college, like Tyler did, right? But ultimately, right, you're going to be 22, 23 years old making your debut, and you're playing against 34, 35-year-old veterans, right? How are you prepared for that moment? That's the biggest baseball moment in your entire career. And so, like, at the highest level, you have to be prepared to face, guys that are 5-10 years older than you, have this much more experience than you, right? You shouldn't pigeon yourself into that age group. And as far as like pitching is concerned, right, like it's so controllable, right? It's at the end of the day, the game doesn't start until we get on the rubber. We throw that ball in the zone, and then once the ball leaves our hand, we can't control everything. But really, it's on us. And I preach that to a lot of these guys. It's like, take your time. Have a pre-pitch routine, right? Like have 1, 2, 3 things that really like just set you up for success, get you into that confident mindset that I kind of spoke about, that will to win, that will to control what you can't control, but that just desire to get it done at all costs. And in my own career, there were plenty of times where, I would kind of get the ball back and it'd be a 2-0 count. And I just flashing across my vision real quick would just be like me giving up a homer. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what the heck? And I remember I read, what is it? The Mental Game of Baseball, unbelievable book. And there's one thing that stood out, and, I hope I can share it here and impact a lot of people through this one little piece of that book. But it was that positive thoughts last in your head for about a second, where negative thoughts last in your head for about 7 or 8 seconds. And so this was before the pitch clock, but I would get the ball back and I would step off the mound. And anytime that kind of vision came across my head, I would count I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I would shake my head as hard as I could to kind of like get that vision out. And it started to really work for me. I was able to kind of capitalize on that, start to get back in the zone, start to, kind of stack victories based on kind of eliminating those negative thoughts. And that was a big help. So whatever that is for, your athlete, for whoever's listening here, right, just try to kind of eliminate those negative thoughts. Every athlete's going to have them. It's not something you shy away from. It's vulnerable conversations that can be really beneficial to the athlete to get them in touch with understanding that it's okay to have those, but it's about, the fork in the road of choosing to take the path of facing it and not kind of like crumbling from it.
So one of the things I want to let parents know, because I'm getting a lot of questions right now, is the Lions Den on Instagram, is basically where Tyler and Matt can be found on any given day between the months of October through February, during the off season, I guess. They're on Instagram. Again, it's Lions Den, LIONSDEN. And they put out some great videos, some what I call hype videos, and they're all things related to arm care and pitching. And on that note, Tyler, I have a question here. At what point did you, as a young pitcher, begin to experiment with, your grips and spinning a baseball? We talk a lot about velocity, and all parents want to know, when's the right time to throw a breaking ball? How do you throw a breaking ball? How do you and Matt handle that at the Lions Den when that question comes up from parents?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think for me, it was a lot of the advice came from you in regards to curveball. You always used to tell me like to pull the curtain down, and that eliminated the, any like trying to, crank my wrist at all or put torque on my elbow. And I had like a natural ability. I think I started throwing it towards when I was 12 and started like being able to like really feel like my hand was working out front of a baseball and I could spin it out front, never mess with anything other than that, really until I got into pro ball. I was very heavily fastball, curveball, changeup my whole life until pro ball. And it was just something that I felt like was a natural capability for me. And then so you start to see with guys that you train, people being, biased towards pronation or supination. And so what that means is that some guys can shape a curveball or a slider better than some other guys, right? And it's really an education process. You get a guy who comes in and he's got the ability to throw stuff that spins and moves horizontally, but or glove side as a righty, but necessarily can't get to the inside of the ball and throw a changeup, or at least that's the misconception. But just because a guy's a supinator doesn't mean that he also can't throw a unique changeup depending on the access of the seams. And so it's more higher level discussions. And so it's really educating guys at a lower level. It's about command, right? Like I think the things that we always preach are we need to compete just in general. We need to command our fastball, and we need to command an off-speed pitch, or at least a changeup and a curveball. And so it's really figuring out the preference of the player. Do you feel better landing a curveball, or do you feel better landing a slider? And then from there, really honing in on the shape. If it's something that, depending on if we have the TrackMan data on him or not, looking at the plot and seeing if it really works well with his delivery. But at the end of the day, it's about execution, right? If I'd rather have a guy say, hey, I can command this slider and it's not great on the metrics potentially, quote unquote, then hey, your slider on the TrackMan is elite and he can't command it, right? It will always be from our end. Let's go execute with what you can command. And then when it's a time of the year where we can potentially develop feel and command of a different secondary, then we'll lean into that during that time of year.
Matt, I'm going to suggest a Lions Den T-shirt idea, what I guess they call the merch of the Lions Den, is nobody cares where ball 4 lands or how fast ball 4 cross home plate.
Yep.
And so on that topic, we have become infatuated, and you were a hard thrower coming out of high school and during your professional career. You threw an elite caliber fastball. And I want parents to understand the progression that it takes for young athletes. In other words, you touched upon it earlier, but I want you to re-emphasize when parents are stressing, whether it's a pocket radar or maybe a stalker gun that they pull out of their briefcase, nobody really cares about how fast you're throwing a baseball. It's where you're throwing the baseball and how often you can repeat to be able to locate your fastball. Can you talk about arm care at the younger ages, maintaining the health, maintaining the strength of your arm is going to matter much more over the long run than how fast you throw a fastball at 14 through 16.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's important to kind of understand, right, in like this day and age, that what you see on the external, right, on social media and all these things is pushing velo and all these things, right? And it almost feels like the game is turned into this like velocity, like that is the game now. It's velo, but at the end of the day, the core of it is still the same, right? It's competitiveness and can you go get guys out? I think like just understanding that not always what you see on social media or even what you see on TV is reality, right? Like the best players and the best pitchers are still going to get the opportunities. And when those guys get the opportunities and they have success, they're going to continue to get opportunities. And the cream always does rise to the top. So I wouldn't get so caught up in the velocity progression as I would with like going on a little bit of what Tyler said as well. Like, the pitch shapes is very important, but don't lose your delivery from it, right? Like and I don't want to get too far into it, but with the research and all the things that came out in regards to, like spin and movement and axis and all these sort of things in the baseball research landscape, there's a way to optimize a pitch for any pitcher, right? But guys get themselves in a rabbit hole when they start to sell out for velocity. They start to sell out for these like crazy breaking balls or crazy changeups or whatever, that they start to like lose their delivery in the process. They don't develop that consistency, and ultimately they're going down the wrong path. They're not chasing the right thing, which is like, how do I have success in the game? How do I get hitters out? How do I know that when I get that opportunity, like I can fall back to the level of my training, which isn't just like, throwing balls 375 feet and, throwing 3-ounce balls as hard as I can into a chain link fence. It's, competing, having the will to win, having your pre-pitch routine, falling back on something that's sustainable, that, is truly from the top down from the major league level. So that's something that we talk about a ton at the Lions Den at any age, whether they're 12, 13, or, they're 18, 19, 20, guys in college, anywhere from, a 12-year-old throwing 62 miles an hour to a, kid up to 97, 98. They all have different issues, but the root of the cause is the information that they're receiving is just right in front of them. It's just kind of like doesn't align with their end goal. We have to kind of get them back to their end goal and get them to buy into their end goal. And once they buy into their end goal, they're much able to buy into the process. They're much able to kind of like buy into the long-term nature of it. And it's not so impulsive chasing a number that, isn't really going to set you up for any of your goals in the future. So I hope I kind of answered the question there.
Yeah. And I think, what a lot of parents really want to hear from, and I hope that we're going to get that takeaway from both, you and Tyler today, Matt, is being a pitcher means being an athlete. It's controlling the controllables, meaning, you have a lot to deal with. You have to set your infielders, you have to maintain, control your base runners, you have to control the tempo of the game. And I don't think we talk about that enough as coaches with young pitchers, is controlling tempo, controlling the base runners, maintaining the visual dynamic of the field behind you, and understanding that those guys want to field ground balls. They want to catch fly balls. The catcher wants to receive, balls in the strike zone. So Tyler, I would love for you to share, as you were becoming a pitcher from the age of 13 through 18, talk about how you would work on things like your pickoff move and fielding your position, because we don't talk about that enough as pitchers. We talk about velocity and grips and spin and vertical and horizontal, but we don't talk about holding runners on, fielding our position, knowing the game situation, meaning runners on first and second, nobody out, seeking the ground ball to turn that double play, etc. So talk about that dynamic mentally as a pitcher and how to learn and train for that aspect of it as a pitcher.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you said it best right at the end there. You need to train for those situations, just like you would sit there and visualize success or visualize yourself executing a pitch or striking a guy out. You need to also visualize it's second and third, one out. Whether it be, fly ball to center, am I backing up home? Or it's first and third, one out. Okay, let's get a ground ball here. Or if I fall behind in the count, let's throw a sinker in, get a ground ball, trust my defense to spin a double play. And so it's putting yourself in situations where maybe they're not ideal, but those are probably the most important pitches that you'll make in your outing, and being prepared for those. So you need to be able to train those situations and also train how you respond in adverse situations too. First inning, I walked a guy, gave up a double, walk the next guy. Is that an opportunity for you to take a step off the mound, take a deep breath, regroup, and just realize your only job is to execute the next pitch? Or are you going to sit there, let the game speed up? Don't take your really centering breath, whatever you want to call it. And then before you know it, you've given up a crooked number. You threw 30 plus pitches in your the things that you can control, your attitude and your effort and your response, they were negative, right? And now you're showing your team you're showing your teammates that you can't necessarily handle adversity, which is okay. You're going to have those outings. I've had plenty of those. To where it's a learning point. It's a part of the game where you need to learn from and grow from. And so again, just trying to land the plane here, those situations, those intangibles are things that not to really focus on what maybe evaluators might be looking at, but if you're at that age where you're playing in front of scouts or college coaches, or maybe even just a high school coach in general who you're trying to try out for the team, they're going to look at those intangibles more than you think. They're going to look at them more than potentially your velocity, more than how your slider is. They want to see how you respond to adversity. We get it all the time. We work collaboratively with the coaches in the area, and a lot of our conversations are not about potentially the development of the player. It's about how are they handling specific instances around showing up to practice, or spending an extra amount of time on their craft, or showing up at class. It's those details that are often seem small to us and simple to us as players that go a long way in regards to kind of showing that you have a high care level for your career. And so it matters. Those small details matter a lot.
Yeah, no, I love that, Ty. Just to piggyback on that, I think that's something so good, a takeaway for some parents here for the 10 to 14U age group is really instill leadership in your athlete. It's inherently going to put them in those situations where they need to step up, because instilling that leadership is going to create them as the leaders of the team. And everybody sees it, right? Whether it's in a big league baseball game or a high school game, it's a big game. You're like, who the whole team wants to have the ball, right? And so preaching that to your son and kind of simulating that environment for him to make that tough decision when he's out there and he has to say, "Yep, foot on the gas. Like, I'm going to execute here at all costs." It can help train that environment in a pretty cool way to kind of help train that leadership from a young age. So love that you mentioned that, Ty. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap up with two questions that I have to ask from a parental standpoint. And a parent just asked me, and I'm going to start with you, Tyler, and then Matt, I'm going to ask you a follow-up to wrap up tonight's episode. Tyler, I want you to talk about the dynamic as a pitcher with regard to the spotlight of all eyes are on that pitcher. And so the weight of expectation on a pitcher, not only from a parent perspective, but as a team, fans, everybody's looking at you. You got the ball, you're on the mound, you're the guy that the camera is focused on. Can you talk about composure and body language, not only as a young pitcher, but as you evolve as a pitcher? You have to have that mindset of next pitch is what's most important. Can't do anything about the last pitch, but the next pitch, I'm going to bring a little something more, a little bit more focus. Just talk about the weight and the dealing of the expectation as a pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a situation as big as you want to in your head, right? I think it's oftentimes those bigger crowds, rivalry game, playing in front of whoever it might be that can elevate a situation for you, elevate your heartbeat. I was always raised on the principles of poise and composure, and that's how you raised me. Was no matter the situation, no matter the environment, no matter the outcome of how you're performing, you stay poised and you stay composed. And that got me through a lot of challenging situations and environments. But it's almost like you have to dumb the game down, bring it down a level when it seems like it's getting ready. So if you're pitching in a state championship game or a playoff game or something that seems more high stakes, again, it's the same game. It's if you strip it all down, your only job is to execute the pitch. That pitch that you have, that's all you can control. Take a step off the mound, whatever happens after that, your only job is to execute the next pitch. And so if you make it about more than what it actually is, then you're going to tense up. You're going to the game's going to speed up on you. Your heart rate's going to elevate. The best players I think, quote unquote, like the clutch players, they don't necessarily raise their game when the stakes are raised. I think they just have the ability to maintain what they were doing prior to and keep a slow heart rate, if you will, to be able to perform better than the opposing players when stakes get a little higher. And so it's an opportunity to really test yourself when it comes to a more challenging game, a more challenging opponent. When we were talking about playing older kids, that's probably a situation at a younger age when you start to play the 15, 16, 17-year-olds as a 13-year-old, like you put me in with Legion baseball, where you start to say, okay, I'm going to build up my reserve and say, okay, I was able to face older players and I succeeded. I know that I can face those guys and have success. And you start to kind of take those small victories and you keep those close to the chest. And so I'll finish because I'm getting long-winded. Being able to get through challenging moments or pressure games and remember those games and kind of keep them in your back pocket as I can face anything at any time. I can compete against anybody. I can pitch in big games. It's just another game, and sticking with that thought process and being able to kind of stay poised and composed is the biggest thing.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm glad you remember those days of yesterday in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And Maddie, we're going to wrap this up. And a lot of parents want to hear from somebody that has played at the level that you and Tyler have played at. And I don't think parents truly understand. For an athlete to throw a professional pitch or to get a professional at bat, that means you are elite on a global platform, meaning the world of professional baseball is much bigger than just the United States, much bigger than North America, Mexico, US, and Canada. It's Japan, it's China, it's Korea, it's all the Latin American countries. And so I want you to explain to parents, when you're on that mound, you have to trust in your preparation. In other words, there's nothing that you can do in that moment other than trust and believe in your preparation, your routine, and your teammates. And can you talk about that from the perspective as a pitcher to get parents to understand it's not the umpire's fault, it's not your fielder's fault, it's not the weather. Results are not the issue. It's your preparation, it's your defense, and your ability to execute.
100%. I'll mention a quote here. It's, you don't rise to the level of the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation. I'll say that one more time. You rise to the level of your occasion, you don't fall. You fall to the level of your preparation. So as a leader, that really, when you step on that mound, you're leading your team, right? Like your second baseman, your shortstop, your third baseman, all the guys in the athletic, they're looking at you, right? You're the one that starts the game. You're the one that initiates it, right? They're looking at you to, he's got the ball, like, we're going to have success. Let's get back in the dugout, right? And so what that is at the core of it is it's leadership, it's accountability, it's taking control of what you can control and going out there and giving it your best, but truly extreme ownership. And that's one of the biggest things I think parents can preach to their athletes from the youngest age is extreme ownership. It's nobody else's fault if it didn't go your way. Train better, want it more, and dig deep. Have that level of tough love, but also, reward the preparation, right? Sometimes it's rewarding the results can be fleeting, but rewarding the preparation is something that can just continue to pile on victories for your athlete, no matter how it goes on the field. And so that's, looking back, what I loved about kind of the way that my, path was I was always rewarded for the preparation. And, even now in my life, I'm, I feel a, very, very strong sense of process because of what the game has taught me. So it's going to last a lifetime for me, past the game of baseball. And so the process is at the core of everything we do as human beings and athletes. And that's why sports are so incredible for the development of not only athletes, but young men. And so that's what I think I'll end with.
Parents, I want to let you know that tonight's episode is really, for me, very heartfelt. Obviously, it's my youngest son. It's obviously somebody that played in the same high school league and division as Tyler did within the ISL, which one could make an argument is the highest level of Massachusetts athletics. But if you have a question pertaining to not only arm care or pitching development, strength training, anything along those lines, I highly encourage you not only to follow Tyler Beede, Matt Tabor. I'm going to have all of their information in the description in both the YouTube video as well as the podcast episode. I encourage you to follow the Lion's Den. But what I would really suggest that you do is reach out to Matt and Tyler. Make sure if you have a question pertaining to pitching, don't chase velocity. Choose a path for your son, your athlete, with regard to what it takes physically and mentally to prepare as a pitcher. There is so much more to the craft of pitching. And I often tell parents, when you're walking, the craft of walking is running, whether that's a marathon or a sprint. You learn how to move your body in a specific tempo and pace and positions. Pitching is much the same, and it really requires the discipline and the repetition in order to kind of continue to learn and implement the retention of your movement pattern. So Tyler and Matt, I applaud you both for an outstanding career as professional athletes. I also applaud you on your beginning stages of your new business at the Lion's Den and kind of passing that baton of baseball knowledge. I know that Tyler would learn at Becker College with me from guys like Mike Carbonneau and Keith Reno, Corey Shepard, and I'm sure, Matt, you had a lot of mentors when you were younger. And I think it's really a great resource for parents to kind of, hey, you know what? I'm going to follow Matt. I'm going to follow Tyler. and I'm going to ask them some questions pertaining to the craft of pitching. Both of Matt and Tyler are in the Baseball Blue Book. They have profiles in there. I strongly encourage you as a parent to create a profile for yourself as a dad or a mom, as well as for your student athlete. But guys, if you want to, one of you want to close, and how do you reach the Lions Den if a parent were so inclined to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Walt. Yeah, you can obviously follow either of us on social media. You can also email either of us, Tyler Beede33@gmail.com, and then I know Matt's Matt at pitchsafe.co. And so, yeah, easily reachable. But I'd like to end with sort of commending you on what you've done over the years and building such a strong network and following and community centered around baseball in such a positive way. I think, the game these days can be very divisive, and people want to kind of stake their claim as knowing everything and, wanting to own the landscape of baseball in a certain way that isn't healthy for the game. I think you've been nothing but positive in regards to educating players, parents, and coaches on how the game should be played, how to develop the game, how parents can respond. And it's been great. The impact that you've had, obviously, I think virtually in regards to your podcast and YouTube has been amazing. It's been amazing content, but I think the work that you've done with families and the time that you commit to families day in and day out, you eat, sleep, and breathe baseball. It's the reason why I'm the player I am today, but it's the reason why so many kids are having the opportunity to go play at the school of their dreams, to extend their careers, for families to get a chance for their kids to be able to go and play for free at college and go get an education too, which is so important. But players haven't been able to realize that in a lot of ways because they chase potentially the wrong path. But I think the path that you've been able to help players and families navigate over the last 10 plus years, 20 plus years really, is just a testament to, I think, your heart for what you've been able to experience with me, and what you've been able to see firsthand in the college landscape, high school, guidance through the process there. And so, yeah, just a long-winded way of saying it's great what you're doing for the game of baseball, for parents all over the country, even in Canada, and excited for you to continue to keep building that momentum into 2025.
Well, I certainly appreciate that as your dad, and I want to extend to parents, and I'm going to lean in a little bit because I want this message to resonate as we close out here. We're beginning 2025, and in about another 2 weeks, today we're at the ABCA convention in Washington, D.C., and I've run into a lot of coaches, a lot of people that I played with and against. And I happened to run into Tim Corbin a little bit earlier and a coach named Larry Day, who's now the scouting director for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I want to just say that in a couple of weeks, Tyler is going to go to an anniversary. And it's the celebration of a national championship. There's only one of those. You're a national champion for the rest of your life. And in 2011, on August 15th, as a parent, I was able to look Tyler in the eye and say, what if you were a part of the first ever national championship team in Vanderbilt history? Parents, I want you to understand this goes by in a snap. It flies by. One day you're at the top of the heap, and the next day you're somebody else's news. Pitching, baseball, it goes by. Enjoy, embrace, live in your now. Be the best version as a parent to support your student athlete. Baseball will come and go. Your children will remember your support, not their strikeouts. I encourage you as a parent, if you're the parent of a pitcher, go onto social media, look up the Lions Den, look up Tyler Beede, look up Matt Tabor. I remember speaking to Mr. Tabor when Matt was going through the process. Spoke with him time and time again. parents, take advantage of their history within the game, their experiences within the game. They will benefit you as a parent to understand what your children are living today. Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight to talk pitching. I think this has been a tremendous opportunity for parents to learn not only the value of the mental development of pitching, but also the health and well-being of their pitchers. Guys, happy 2025, and I hope you guys have a great season at the Lions Den.
Thanks,
Matt.
Walt.
All right, guys. And parents, next week we're going to have a great conversation. We're going to be talking head coach at Columbia University, Brett Peretti, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the academic side of college athletics. Till next week. Thank you, guys.
Great work, Walt.